Welcome to an explainer that's going to take us on a deeply visceral, psychological journey today. We're stepping straight into a grimdark fable. I want you to literally imagine a world wrapped in this slow, oppressive shadow, a place where we're going to trace a path from the absolute heaviest of iron chains all the way to the chilling, magnificent freedom of an open sky. Better the hunger that is honest than the feast that is a leash. Just let those words echo in your mind for a second. This margin gloss from our source text instantly plunges us right into the abyss of our narrative. It's a haunting truth that poses a terrifying question right out of the gate. What if the safety you cling to is actually starving your soul? Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The Black Iron Spire. The Valley of Chains. Picture this. Before the first stone of the valley was even laid, an unspeakable shadow cast a permanent twilight over the bogs. Down in the mire, the shivering herd kneels. And here is the tragedy of it all. They literally mistake the freezing, miserable dampness for a holy baptism. They convince themselves, that their trembling weak limbs are merely heavy with the weight of a divine benediction. And the massive iron chains binding them to the altar? Oh, they call those the secret vestments of the meek. But let's look at the reality of their situation. We call this false piety. It's essentially a psychological mechanism used to dress up powerlessness and fear. The herd whispers to one another, "Blessed are our heavy chains, for they keep us from floating into the wicked sky." In this valley, they consecrate what they cannot change. But this grand architecture of submission, it isn't sustained by divine grace, not at all. High above the rotten spires, a relentless wind howls a terrifying truth. The structure stands only because they suppress their own primal energy. It's an energy the fearful call a demon, but the brave know as the only light capable of burning through the dark. Moving deeper into the story, we hit part 2, the crypt of the soft bread, the taste of submission. So deep in these damp catacombs, you have these pale scribes, and they bake a soft ash-gray loaf that tastes faintly of dust and heavy opium. The blind citizens just gorge themselves on this meager, cloying offering. To even question the bitterness of the crust is deemed an unpardonable madness, punishable by exile into the shrieking gales outside. You can almost hear the scribes whispering from the shadows, "This rot is purity. Embrace the decay as your salvation." And the people, terrified of the wild chaos outside, they just chew the mush, praising the very rot in their teeth as a spiritual virtue. And this brilliantly illustrates the deep philosophical contrast at the heart of our fable. On one side, we've got the holy tax. This is the slave morality of the herd. It is involuntary suffering imposed by the valley and then sanctified after the fact just to make it bearable. On the other side, we have Fame's Electa, or the chosen hunger. Now, this is master morality. It is a starvation selected by the free spirits, an act of will that comes before the deprivation. Suffering chosen in the service of honesty is fundamentally different from suffering endured for the sake of a comfortable lie, right? Let's shift gears a bit. Part 3, the smelted crown, the fire of awakening. Here, we meet a broken blacksmith weeping into his forge. His hands are completely warped by decades of hammering cold iron for masters who never even knew his name. In his state of warped obedience, he looks at his ruined palms and actually blesses his blisters. He believes his agony is a holy tax required to keep the night wolves away from his hearth. But then, a single rogue spark flies from the anvil and catches the hem of his tattered, consecrated rags. For a split second, his conditioned mind screams at him to put it out. But then, a jagged, terrible laughter erupts from his chest. His entire internal monologue shifts. He realizes the holy tax was a complete lie. His suffering wasn't noble. It was a self-imposed prison. He thinks, actually, scratch that. I am not the prey. I am the fire, and the wolves are merely waiting for me to burn. From the white-hot embers of his own ruin, he outright refuses to quench the flame. Instead, he forges a heavy crown of absolute defiance. So the crucial point here is this. Beneath the rubble of false piety, beneath the paralyzing fear of the night wolves, lies this core concept, the will to power. It is a raw, terrifying, and fiercely creative force. It is ugly and radiant all at once. It shatters the sacred masks we wear, asking for absolutely nothing but the brutal honesty the valley has spent its whole existence refusing to afford it. Let's see how this builds. Part 4, Fame's Electa, Chosen Hunger, the stripping of labels. The unlearning process begins with a silent child in the catacombs who simply spits that chewed opium bread right onto the cobblestones. He and a scattering of others like him start to realize that the gilded words of the scribes taste of rust. The free spirits must strip away the moral labels of the valley, much like a man in a burning house stripping away everything that isn't himself. First, they recognize the lie of the bread. Second, they unlearn the word good, realizing it was merely what served the many who couldn't serve themselves. Third, they unlearn evil, revealed as merely what threatened those who had lost the strength to be threatening. And finally, having completely broken the language of their masters, they step outward to stand in the wind.
Which brings us to part 5, the chalk-line horizon. The open void.
For centuries, you see, the village elders maintained a thick line of bone ash drawn straight across a narrow gorge. They warned that stepping beyond it meant wild, instant chaos. The herd stared at this boundary with pious dread, calling their refusal to walk forward a triumphant victory of the soul. But one midnight, a withered woman with eyes like cracked glass walks right up to the edge. In the ultimate act of defiance against the entire architecture of the scribes, she looks out into the dark, lifts her foot, and deliberately drags it straight through the sacred chalk. And now we really have to ask, what awaits her beyond the sacred chalk? What is the true cost of leaving the valley's cage? Because, as the free spirits realize, the safety of the valley and the cage of the valley were, all along, built from the exact same gray stone. She steps across. And nothing. No lightning strikes the earth, no gaping maw opens to swallow her gasping spirit. The valley's oldest, best-kept secret is laid totally bare. Nothing consumes them. There is no chaos waiting to devour their souls. There is only the immense nothingness of the void. There is literally only wind.
Part 6, the Forge of Sovereign Well, Inventing the Path.
The blacksmith's defiant fire, the child spitting out the bread of lies, and the withered woman stepping through the ash line, they all find the exact same thing. There was only the immense, magnificent cold of an open sky. This is what the free spirits discover. Not a new set of rules, not a warmer, safer valley. They find an open space that demands absolute accountability. It demands that the free spirit take full responsibility for their own existence, entirely without the comforting illusions of the scribes. And so I leave you with this. When you look at the structures you accept, the bread you are fed, and the lines drawn in chalk around your own life, you have a choice. Will you stay in the freezing dampness of the valley, or will you invent your own path into the void, or perish beautifully in the attempt? Think about your own chosen hungers. Until next time, keep questioning the borders of your world.